Just figure out a way to get in the room that isn't the way that everybody else is getting in, and you'll just have a much better chance.
As the leader, it's our role to say, hey, this is the culture I want. This is the kind of people I want to attract. And the more clarity you have on that, the more you're going to attract people that raise their hand and say, yes, I want to be a part of that.
I still never say no. I say yes, and it might cost more. Yes, and it might take longer. Yes, and have you considered these other things? It helps you with not saying yes to things that you shouldn't be saying yes to, but it also keeps you curious and, allows you to grow on other people's ideas.
Welcome back to the Takeover. Today, we're joined by the creative powerhouse, Macaela VanderMost, is the founder and executive creative director of NewFangled Studios. Macaela has mastered the art of selling by story selling with a purpose. And now we've heard so many people talk about storytelling, and it really is true. Storytelling is such a powerful part of persuasion and marketing and all of that. But Macaela has done it exceptionally well. She's built a very, very lucrative agency working with some of the biggest brands in the world. She's really challenging stereotypes, spotlighting unheard voices, and pushing boundaries for her clients. From late nights as a reality TV editor to founding a studio that combines agency and strategy with production and artistry, Macaela has taken the creative world one bold project at a time. So welcome to the show, Macaela.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
What's really interesting is the kind of conversation that we actually had right before this started. You've actually built a really, really successful agency. You've built an incredible business that only a tiny, tiny percentage of entrepreneurs that start their businesses are able to grow to. So I really want to jump in today of like how you think about business and what brought you to designing a perfect life for yourself versus just trying to follow what everybody else is doing with growth. So when did you start your agency?
Started it in 2009 when I certainly didn't have enough money or experience to be doing it.
Where was your mindset out when you started the business? What was the goal of starting your agency?
So back in 2009, the marketing industry or the advertising creative industry was a bit different than it is now, where an ad agency would work with, I don't even know, like 10 vendors to get one campaign done because they'd have to work with all these different specialty shops plus their own internal crew. And the amount of bloat was insane. And so I just looked at that and said, why are there so many people on every call, so many people in every meeting, like moving the project hand to hand, shop to shop? Like, what? Like, this is ridiculous. There's a better way to do this. And so I started my company in 2009, named it NewFangled. Which means different from what you're used to, objectively new, with just the goal of like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And it took some trial and error to sort out that better way. But today's technology and the talented creative that's out there, there's a much more streamlined way to achieve great, creative results. So that was my goal when I first started. I wanted to create a life for myself that I wanted to live. I wanted to have coworkers that I really liked. I wanted to create a brand that I was proud of. That was the problem I was solving for, was like extreme agency bloat.
Would you say it was for you as an entrepreneur, was it more so about that fixing that problem that you saw with the agency bloat? Was it the lifestyle? Was it like, I could do this better? Or was it, hey, I want to live that entrepreneurial lifestyle?
You have to have both, right? I
Yeah.
have been an entrepreneur since I came out of the womb. I had a paper route, I had lemonade stands. I used to hustle and sell things in fifth grade at school. I come from an entrepreneurial family. My parents owned a plastics factory that they started up with out of a home garage. So I've seen them do it, and that's just kind of what I knew. And I've never considered not being an entrepreneur. I also knew that I needed to learn on somebody else's dime, so I went and I worked at some agencies. I've always also known that I wanted to be in video and advertising. I've been super passionate about that since I was young. In high school and everything, I was always running around with a camera and making fake ads. And like, I just have always been into it.
So you like the creative part
Oh,
of
yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So I think for me, it's like I grew up in an entrepreneurial environment. So that's what I knew, and I never considered anything else. I'm passionate about advertising and video and have been since childhood. That combination of two things was kind of like, all right, get out there, look around, see what the world needs in that category. And then once I felt like I kind of identified the problem and had enough youthful arrogance to think that I could do it better. It's funny because the older I get, the more I'm like, oh, I see why they did it that way. But I had enough youthful arrogance to think I could do it better. And that's when NewFangled was born.
So were you working at agencies doing video work with them?
Yeah.
Like, okay, okay. And tell me about that. What happened there?
I was a freelancer. I worked at a number of different agencies. I had the good fortune of coming up as a video editor. When you're a video editor, you actually sit in the room with the creative directors. So even though I was in my early 20s, I was sitting all day long with very senior level creatives and the brand clients,
Mm.
and I was the one pushing the buttons. And so I would hear the conversations and I would form relationships. A lot of chat and a lot of, hey, I'm going to render for 10 minutes. And then we chat about our personal lives for a little bit. And sometimes the edit suite too just turns into almost like a therapy booth where like, some senior group VP creative director is like venting about the problems with the project to this young editor. And I learned it just like
Wow.
an unimaginable amount of soft skill business knowledge from being in the edit suite. The relationships I formed in those edit suites are all of the same ones that the foundation of my business is now built on. Those creative directors went on to be creative directors at major brands, and they took me with them.
So you're in editor role, and I think a lot of people could think, well, oh, they could be striving to get in a higher position, but you're saying you saw the value, like I'm in the room.
I was in
I'm
the
in the
room.
room.
Yeah.
Let me learn, let me listen, let me build relationships. So, I mean, that's just incredible for you to be able to see that at such a young age, the value of just listening and forming and building those relationships versus just trying to focus on getting that slight incremental raise. Where did that come from? And was this, I'm kind of blown away. Like, did your parents teach you a lot of how to think about life and business?
I
Yeah.
think just by example, we didn't come from money, just hustle hard, be resourceful, and try to find a side door. Nothing in my life growing up did we ever do, air quotes, the normal way. We'd always try to have to figure out some other way to do it because we didn't necessarily have the resources to do it the regular way. And I think that gave me the mindset of like, why are ad agencies doing it? There's got to be a better way. Well, you could have a biz dev team and do it the typical way, and you have to have funding and all of these things, or you could find side doors.
And so when you say side doors, that seems like a theme that you have in your life. What does that mean to you?
I think it's like just not defaulting to the traditional path and
Yeah.
thinking, all right, I know where I want to get. What are all the different ways I could get there? And what are the ways that I could get there that probably other people aren't trying? For example, I work with Google. They're my biggest client. I didn't go through a traditional pitch process to work with them.
There's no RFP that you went
No
through?
RFP. No, I knew I wanted to work with that brand. Look for side doors, being really platform specific. They own YouTube. How can I know everything there is to know about YouTube? It's all on the internet. It's free for anybody to figure out.
Mm.
Become a subject matter expert and start talking to those people. Not necessarily pitching any particular service, just really understanding the platform, or look for relationships, and not in like a using people way, but where you're just asking questions and you're offering mutual value. I know side door is a vague thing, but it's like just figure out a way to get in the room that isn't the way that everybody else is getting in, and you'll just have a much better chance.
Wow. So you're getting in the side doors. It seems like in life, in business in general, which is probably why you do so well for your clients, is you're always trying to look at things in a different way, a different path than traditional. And it's proved out well for you. In fact, we've talked off camera, and I know that you built to an 8-figure agency. Very, very healthy, great culture, great team. You guys love what you do, and surprise everybody. She punches out at 5 o'clock. So I don't put you out at 5 o'clock, but you do. So I'm like, let's learn about this. What was that path from when you started to, now having an 8-figure agency for the last 4 years?
So I would say when I started, it was just very one foot in front of the other. And it certainly was not a punch out at 5 o'clock lifestyle for the first 10 years. It was a make it your entire personality lifestyle and include everybody you love in it so that you can actually see the people that you love.
Mm.
Yeah, like my best friends painted my office with me. My wife is my business partner. My brother works for the company. Like the people that I love and the things that I love are extremely intertwined with NewFangled as a company. And I think that that naturally just happened because I never stopped working the first 10 years. I don't want
Wow.
to preach like a false, like, oh, you can do all of this and still punch out at 5 o'clock. I did that once I built a machine for myself that's working.
So you earned that.
Sure.
You earned that. I love
Sure.
that. Okay.
The first 10 years, I worked. Yeah, I worked like a dog. I just was never not working. I didn't take vacations. I didn't take days off. I barely took any time on the weekends. But it didn't feel like work always
Mm.
because I was absolutely obsessed with it. And I think that
Um,
that honestly was the key to my success was just I was so deeply interested in it. It wasn't boring. It didn't feel like work. It felt like I had a manic obsession with something that like I was able to work on.
you said something, they're obsessed. Like you just loved it. What about it was that it didn't feel like work? What was it that you just loved doing?
It almost felt like a sport to me. Like I wanted to win. I wanted to figure out how to get in the right room. And then once I got in it, try to connect with the right people. So that part of it was really fun. I'm competitive with
Mm.
myself to try to find those opportunities. Once I found the opportunities, the actual creative would keep me up at night. Like I wouldn't, like once I was on a project, I couldn't think of anything but that project. And it might have even been to an unhealthy extent where it was all I thought about or all I wanted to talk about. Clients really like it when you're that obsessed with doing a good job for them. And I think that probably has a large part of my success because everything that I built is based on referral. Once you get in the door and you are that obsessed with their success because you just can't stop thinking about it and you're like, how can I make this better? Achieve something that maybe isn't realistic within the budget that I have. Those people like they'll like you, they'll say,
Wow.
wow, I should refer her. That's really how it grew, was just doing a great job. And then as it grew, and it grew one project, one employee at a time. It grew slow, really slowly. So I would do everything myself in the beginning and charge next to nothing just to try to like get my foot in the door, which I actually don't recommend in retrospect. I think what that does is set you up to be the person that people go to when they don't have any money.
You would do that one piece differently?
I would do that piece differently because I was so desperate to work on things. In the beginning, it was great. I'll say yes to anything, which got me a lot of opportunities because I was the yes person. I will stay up all night. I will work so hard. I will do literally every aspect of it myself. And if I don't know how to
Mm.
do something, I will watch YouTube tutorials until I've figured it out. Like I, I was literally obsessed. On one hand, that was good because it got me in rooms I probably otherwise wouldn't have been invited into. But on the other hand, I started to get the reputation of the person who would say no to nothing. And at a certain point, that stopped working for me because it was a
Mm.
race to the bottom.
Yeah. How would you do it differently if you were to do it again, or if you were mentoring somebody and they were going through the same process? What would you tell them to do?
I think you have to do that a little bit, unless you have startup. You either have to have money or you have to have just extreme amounts of energy and hustle. To some extent, I had to do that, and I don't really know how I would have done it differently. But I think I would have started saying no sooner than I did. I just needed to learn how to say no.
You got this hustle, you're not saying no to anything. What was the transition where you started saying no? What did that look like?
I have fantastic boundaries now. And I don't say no, I say yes and say yes, we can do that.
Mm.
And I still never say no. I say yes, and it might cost more. Yes, and it might take longer. Yes, and have you considered these other things? That would be a takeaway if someone is new to entrepreneurship. Yes, and is a wonderful phrase. It helps you with not saying yes to things that you shouldn't be saying yes to, but it also keeps you curious, allows you to grow on other people's ideas. So yes, that's a great idea, and consider this, and then do that back and forth, and you'll grow exponentially. When I started transitioning to setting healthy boundaries for myself, was once it wasn't just me anymore and it was a company that it was affecting and impacting other people when I would just say yes, 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 yes. And it's okay, now they have to stay late, whereas it's a little
Yeah.
different when I'm just doing it myself. And the other piece was actually deeply personal. I'm a queer woman, and this was in the 2000s where advertising was not as inclusive as it is now. And diversity was not only not a thing, but could be sort of laughed at. I had to start setting some boundaries with if I felt like I was working on something that didn't reflect my values, I would speak up. It was right around the same time that I was like, no, I don't want to work all night long anymore. I don't want to make other people work all night long. And also, I'm not going to disrespect myself. You're disrespecting yourself and you're disrespecting your employees when you say yes
Wow.
to things that you don't actually agree with.
as entrepreneurs, like we can grind ourselves to nothing. I love your energy. You're like an energizer bunny. But for you, was it like seeing your employees, "Oh, I can't do that to them," or was it just a combination?
I think it was largely when it's shifted from just affecting me to affecting others.
Yeah.
And some of it will just be like disrespectful clients. Like, they say they're going to get you notes at 9 a.m. and they get you the notes at 6 p.m. and they still expect it that same night, things like that. And they'd be like, okay, and do it with a smile. But now that somebody else is doing it because I'm working on something else, it's like,
Mm,
well, I'm not going to ask you to do that. So it becomes different when it's not just you and
yeah.
you have a culture to take care of and you don't want to be the type of employer that burns people out. And then there's also your personal values. It's not always just about, somebody trying to make you do it faster and cheaper. A lot of times it would be clients, asking me to participate in messaging I didn't believe in, or being, potentially disrespectful in the way that they're talking to my employees, and like having to have the guts to say like, hey, is there another way that we could say that? Where my boundaries became more clear than ever was in 2015 when I had a kid. My daughter was born in 2015. And I remember thinking, how am I ever going to be a good parent and be home enough because I worked so much?
Hmm.
And my wife and I had a discussion and we said, we're just going to tell people this is what we're doing. And if somebody asks us to do something that's outside of that, we'll say like, yep, we can actually absolutely do that, but here's when you'll have it by, instead of just always saying yes and then
Yes,
staying late.
and I'm gonna use this. I'm seeing this theme. I like this.
So if people give you work that's due that night, but they gave you the things late, I would always in previous, life just be like, okay, and then just work late. Once my daughter was born, I want to be
Yeah,
home for dinner. So it's always like, yes, I can do that, but here's how I can do that within boundaries that are healthy for me. And you don't need to say that in that way, but
sure.
you need to think about it in that way for yourself. Everybody was receptive to it. There was not a single client who ever pushed back
Huh.
when, as long as I was doing what I said I would do, I just wouldn't overpromise. And if they couldn't say okay, then we would talk about maybe other options. Just kind of like setting those boundaries for yourself and setting those expectations was huge for my own personal life, and then for the culture that we built NewFangled on.
It's like almost this whole time where you're like, oh, I don't want to say no, and then you finally say yes, and people, okay, cool, sure, no worries, totally get
Kind
it.
of, yeah. It was like, oh, maybe I could have done that a while ago. Maybe I could, or maybe I couldn't have. I think a lot of it too came with the confidence of now I am working with big brands. Now I do have cool stuff on my website. Like my
Mm.
confidence is high now. So I'm not scared to say yes and.
Now it's yes, and I'm. By the way, I'm going to use this. I think everybody listening and watching this show is just like, okay, there's a lot of lessons. Definitely, if you're listening to this, you're going to want to rewatch it, re-listen to this. You're very casual and like, yeah, I kind of did this and I built this. You're incredibly sharp in the way you look at things. I don't know if you realize it's very unique. As one thing that stood out to me, and another thing that keeps sticking out to me is you care about people a lot. Your two biggest motivators when things were shifting was your team and was your daughter. That tells me that like your some of your biggest drivers are those people that you care about in your life. So I just want to point that out. Like it's always refreshing to talk to somebody who's both you want to win. Like it's so clear you are driven and obsessed to win and be the best at what you do, but also you are very deeply concerned about those who are close in your life. So it's really refreshing to see people that have both of those qualities, and I respect that about you a lot.
Thank you very much for recognizing that.
What is that culture that you built at your company, and what does that look like to work at your team?
The key to a good business is relationships. It's the relationships that you have in your life so you're not feeling burnt out, and that you do have those supportive relationships in your personal life and family. It's the relationships with your coworkers and your vendors and all the people who actually make the work happen. It's also the relationships with the clients. If you have those three things, you're personally fulfilled with relationships. You have all the people who actually get the work done, having a positive relationship with them, also having a good relationship with the people who are currently or in the future might be in a position to give you work. That's really all you need to build a solid business. Yeah, I think relationships are the most important piece of it. In terms of culture at NewFangled, we took the time to develop a North Star for ourselves. Over the years, we went from saying yes to everything to like, yes, but this and yes, but that. And we went through some phases where we were just really focused on measurable results. Our North Star was a little bit all over the place. And so we took time in 2020, actually, when we slowed down to reflect on what are all the things that are important to NewFangled, the individual employees, me as a leader, our clients. And we just sort of made this like laundry list and then narrowed it down to what now are the 4 points of the NewFangled North Star. The center of it is a star, and that reflects our values. The top and the bottom of the star they're a push-pull. You want to have one, but sometimes one comes at the expense of the other. For us, the push-pull, the top of it is creativity and innovation. That's the part where it's like, I'm obsessed. I want to think about this all the time. This is fun for creative people. It's like the jobs that you want to take on and you don't even care if you make money on them. They're just cool. That's the creativity and innovation. But then at the base of it, the foundation of it is business results. My clients are going to come to me unless I actually get them business results. And so I think of those two things as a push-pull from one to the other. If I ground it in business results, sometimes I can only be so creative before I start to get to a point where I'm putting art over business, just trying to make something that looks cool. The flip side too, like sometimes you really want to push the creativity, but you need to make sure that you're hitting those fundamentals of business results. For us, the top and the bottom of the star are business results and creativity and innovation. And then the left and the right points of the star. The left and right points of the star are what I call my non-negotiables. Anything I work on needs to hit these 2 points. And for us, it is respect and inclusion. But if you respect the people who are doing the work for you, you respect the people who are hiring you, and you respect yourself, that's the key to a good relationship. It also needs to mean that those people respect you back, right? So respect and inclusion, that's what that's about. And creating inclusion for us in advertising, both on the screen, is extremely important to me. Our work is extremely inclusive in casting. So the left side, that non-negotiable, is respect and inclusion. And then on the right side, it's forward progress. Forward progress can mean anything from as simple as, hey, is there an intern that wants to learn more about this type of thing? Like let's pull them in and give them that learning opportunity, all the way up to forward progress for the world. Are we working on something we're really proud of that we feel like can start to break down barriers in terms of inclusion and representation in advertising? Those are the two non-negotiables for me. We have to be making forward progress on something. It could be an individual person's career. It could be the world. And we have to be respectful and we have to be inclusive. And if we're doing those three things, then we can find our balance between the business results and the creativity and innovation. That's sort of the culture in a nutshell, is that North Star.
You just have such incredible clarity on that. I mean, just incredible clarity. I mean, I think the big, who was it? Jim Collins, Good at Great and then Built to Last. One of the biggest things he said is great companies, it wasn't necessarily what values they held, but it was, did they have values that everybody was bought into? As the leader, it's our role to say, hey, this is the culture I want. This is where I want to build my business. This is the kind of people I want to attract. And the more clarity you have on that, the more you're going to attract people that raise their hand and say, yes, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that mission. I want to be a part of that culture. And my word, the clarity that you brought to that, it's incredible. Do you find that having that kind of clarity has been a part of you being able to attract the kind of talent and teammates that you have on your team?
Yeah, the North Star becomes almost like a filter for every decision that we make and everything that we do. One, it's a beacon. If you really don't vibe with that, we probably just won't continue conversations very much organically. And I've had people who think we're a little bit too woke for them, and that's fine. My values are not everybody's values, and that's cool. We've definitely parted ways extremely early with clients because we just didn't have the same values. So that's cool. It's attracting the kind of people who I want to apply for the job. It's an agreement that you're making when you come on the team. This isn't a surprise. This is part of our application, lists out our North Star. Part of the job description is to embody the NewFangled North Star and push it forward. If you make really clear what you want your culture to be, it will just happen because that's just who you're going to attract.
You got me fired up because I had actually built an agency, grew super fast. I did not set, here's the culture I want. Culture will always build The question is, are you directing it like your North Star? And when you don't set in a North Star, you don't set the direction of your culture, it will build. And generally, it's going to build on whoever's the most enthusiastic or the most negative in the company. And then you build a toxic culture. So
Yeah.
we ended up having to rebuild in 2020, interestingly enough. And we built incredible culture. It really does attract the right clients. It attracts the right people. So, I mean, I'm resonating with this very, very, very much. And your energy and the clarity that you bring to everything that you have, do you feel like your communication skills, is that something that you've had kind of you've always been able to speak with people? Or is that something you've been intentional about, like, hey, I really need to, with my goals, with where I want to go with communicating with people, I need to intentionally develop those kind of communication skills?
I'm not sure it was either. I think honestly, largely what I do as a creative is take complex topics and try to communicate them in the simplest, most interesting way possible. Because I do that all day for my clients, it becomes easier for me to do it just in my everyday life. I could give you an example. My older daughter has type 1 diabetes. She wears devices on her body that beep when her blood sugar is high or low. She's in fourth grade, and like kids are looking at her like, why are you beeping? Why are you wearing devices in your body? An example of where this type of skill set comes in handy is like I was able to go into her classroom and explain to the kids what these are, what they're used for, and just sort of a very simple and matter of fact way, and in a conversational way. And I think that, as an example, that's kind of the same thing that I do for my clients, if whether I'm
Mm.
explaining how a home equity line of credit works for Bank of America, or how to activate your Google Fi plan, like any of those types of things that I'm doing for my clients, it basically comes down to how do you simplify and make interesting. Then that just turns into the way that I talk, whether I'm in the classroom explaining it
Oh
to
my
fourth
gosh.
graders or
I love
talking to you
it.
now.
Because I mean, you're taking topics that are not, they're not sexy, they're not fun, they're not
Right.
interesting, and you're creating flavor and color. And oh, so we're obsessed with copywriting and how do you use one little word switch to bring color to what you're saying. And so, I mean, I think you and I could chat for a really long time. And I love your energy. You're like a fireball, man. You got me like, I don't even need caffeine right now. Where are you headed now? Where's the next phase for you in business?
The next phase for me in business is to go deeper and wider with social. So when NewFangled first started, I mean, social media was a brand new thing. It was barely there.
Mm.
And that was 15 years ago. One thing that's really important in business is to stay current and to continue to look for the needs that are shifting, not just what you want to work on, but actually where is the industry going. That pointed me more and more and more towards social media. To this day, most of our work is now in the social sphere. So where I see the future of NewFangled is actually all of our creative being social led, whether it is for social media or not. If it's an out of home billboard, still informing it with what's happening on social media, because that's the way that people communicate today. So that's what I'm extremely interested in now, is the sociology of social media and the way that people communicate and think, and that ideas spread and grow through social, and then how my clients can benefit from that. So that's where we're headed.
Where would you go get that information on the psychology and sociology? You use way smarter words than I have, but I mean, where do you go to research that? Are you just consuming the material? Do you have certain experts that you would look up to find that information?
Well, I think it's like anything. Your feed kind of curates itself based on what you're interested in. And I mentioned I've been obsessed with this for a long time. And so, one thing that I do every day is I spend an hour on LinkedIn,
Mm.
because I find LinkedIn to be extremely valuable for the two things that are important, which is your own curiosity. I read articles, people post their own newsletters, um, industry publications, all of that is on LinkedIn, and I look at it every day. So, what are the top 5 campaigns to know about right now? Like, I'll know what they are
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I read the stuff on LinkedIn. And then also relationships, being able to comment on, congratulate people when they did an amazing campaign, or answer a question that somebody has, or ask a thought-provoking question in my comment on my own page. So that's really where I get it from, is my LinkedIn feed has become like a really nice curation of the things that I'm interested in.
I love it. Well, this has just been a great episode. I think there's just a ton of value. I for sure, it's just the energy you bring, the clarity you bring to communication. It's second to none. It really is. This is one of the favorite episodes that I've recorded, just because the way you communicate, the way that you're able to bring clarity, your confidence, your energy, I think is just such a great episode. And I'm excited for people to listen in, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of notes they take.
Thank you.
I want to make sure that we get some value to you and make sure, we can help you out. What's the best way for people to connect with you, and who would you like to connect with?
Well, I'd love to connect with anybody who's interested in marketing or who's in the marketing and creative space. Like I said, I'm on LinkedIn every day and I'm very active. So connect with me on LinkedIn or follow me on LinkedIn. And then also, if you're interested in the work that I'm doing, I have a blog on my website, which is newfangledstudios.com. And we have a thinking section where we just post our thoughts, articles, and then sort of contribute back to that thought leadership as well. So check out my website and add me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, Macaela, this has just been an absolute pleasure to have you on this show, and excited to. I'm sure we're going to continue our friendship and communication from here. So we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I enjoyed it.
All right, see you soon. Bye for now. Again, this was the Takeover, where domination is not a destination, it is a way of life. Stay winning.